Today we're going to be talking about cognates, and the book I chose for this presentation is called Me, Frida by Amy Novesky and illustrated by David Diaz. And this book actually won the Pura Belpre Award, and according to the American Library Association, this award is in recognition for a Latino or Latina author or illustrator who best portrays Latino cultural experience in their work of literature, specifically for children or youth. So this book won the award in 2011, and specifically for the illustrator David Diaz, whose illustrations definitely portrayed the cultural experience of Frida Kahlo. So a brief summary of the book, Me Frida, is that it shows the journey of the artist Frida Kahlo before being seen as famous. So we know that Frida Kahlo was actually married to Diego Rivera, who was a very famous artist at the time, and even now, everybody knows who Diego Rivera is. So she kind of lived in his shadow. She was an artist herself, but like I said, Diego Rivera had always been the spotlight in their relationship. He was the one that everybody knew about. He was the one that everybody went to. The story mentions that they were invited to many important parties and events, and she was always in the background, and nobody knew kind of who she was except that she was the wife of the famous Diego Rivera. So she always lived in this kind of background or kind of shadow of Diego Rivera. And like I said, this shows her journey, not only emotionally, because obviously she didn't have the confidence to portray her work and to, be seen on par with her husband, but also her physical journey. So we know that Frida Kahlo loved Mexico. She was born in Mexico and she loved her country. But she had to move to the States again because of Diego Rivera's work. He had some work here in California, so because of his work, she followed him over to the States, and it was some sort of a culture shock for her. She really missed her country and she really missed her culture. She felt out of place sometime. And they definitely tried to explore around and kind of check the United States around for a bit, but she still felt lonely, especially because Diego Rivera was out so much because of his work and because of his lifestyle as a famous artist. So here we see that Frida Kahlo was lonely. She was not confident with herself, and she was just out of place because she didn't feel at home here in the United States. So this shows her journey and her emotional growth and her emotional development. And by the end of the book, she does do a painting. She gets to explore the United States on her own, specifically San Francisco. She gets to explore, and she finds that passion in her and that desire in her to grow and to be not only to be important and be seen as important, but just let her inner self show and her inner importance and her inner value show. So obviously she didn't do it because she wanted to be famous, but she did it for her own emotional growth. So by the end, she created a painting that she titled Frida and Diego Rivera. And this was a very important thing because she placed herself first. Like I said, she had always lived under Rivera's shadow. So adding herself first to that painting, and this painting was created in April of 1931. So she put herself first, and this was exhibited in the 6th annual exhibition of the San Francisco Society of Women's Artists. So this was a very important stepping stone and milestone for Frida Kahlo because it showed she portrayed her own value and she was confident in her own value. So I think this very well shows the result of her confidence and the result of her emotional growth. So that's a little bit about the book. That's a short summary about the book. And we are talking about cognates. So according to the article by Montelongo, Hernandez, Hurdle, and Cuello, cognates are words that are orthographically, semantically, and syntactically similar in two languages because of shared etymology. And I know these are pretty big words, so just to kind of simple it down a little bit, cognates share a similar meaning, they share a similar spelling, and they can share a similar pronunciation as well. So not all of these have to apply, but obviously they share, one of the main things about these words is that they share a similar etymology. Specifically for English and Spanish, a lot of these words share the Latin connection too. So they are originally from the Latin language. And then from the book Mi Frida, 10 words that I found, 10 cognate words that are found are as follows. So it is artist, artista, celebrate, celebrar, exhibition, exhibición, north, norte, monumental, monumental, adorn, adornar, admire, admirar, famous, famoso, explore, explorar, y corrido, which is the same in Spanish, corrido. So how would I teach the concept of cognates to my students? Definitely, I would present this concept as an asset, as a resource, and definitely as a tool. Um, just giving them that exposure, I think. First off, I would probably give them a list of some examples, maybe, just like the list that I read right now of the words that I found. I could probably give them a similar list and kind of, just give them a visual and read the words out to them too, so they can hear the similar pronunciation and they can also see it in writing as well. So they could see the similar spelling, hear the similar pronunciation, and then figure out that, these also share a similar meaning. So I think that's definitely that exposure as well would help the children grasp this concept of cognates. And also maybe a guessing game too. I think this would definitely engage the students as well. And I came up with two examples that I could probably use, especially with native Spanish speakers. So I came up with two Spanish sentences and I substituted one word in each with the English word. And I think this would kind of expose the children to what the concept of cognates are and also engage the student in kind of figuring out what the cognate would be and what the definition may be. So these examples goes as follows. My first one would be voy a celebrate mi cumpleaños. So the sentence itself is in Spanish, but I added celebrate instead of celebrar. And I would kind of help the students realize that, you know what, I think if we add celebrar and celebrate, these are cognates and they mean the same thing, right? They look similar, they sound similar, and they mean the same thing. So I think that exposure too. And a second example that I came up with was, yo soy un artista muy famous. So again, the sentence is in Spanish for my native Spanish speakers, but I replaced that famoso with famous just so they can grasp the concept again of the cognates, because famous and famoso have that similar pronunciation, they have a similar spelling, and they also have the same meaning too. So I think this would be a very interactive kind of exposure to the students, and they could see what it looks like as well, because I know explaining something versus students who learn better with visuals would be a lot more helpful and differentiate the learning for multiple students. And then according to the reading too, one of the strategies is called the cognate context clue strategy, which also seems very, very helpful. And this is because I think it provides a scaffolding sort of strategy. Specifically in the example they provided, I know they mentioned the book Esperanza Rising, and how Esperanza Rising, although it is very cultural and it does have some Spanish words incorporated in the book, it is also it has some complex words too that not a lot of English learners may be familiar with, so they may feel overwhelmed. But having these context clues as well would be very helpful. And one of the examples that was shown was the word trustworthy, and the cognates that were added to the sentence after trustworthy were honest. So if you know what honest means in Spanish, honesto, you can figure out what trustworthy means. So I think this is very helpful for, like I said, a more scaffolding event, not very beginning of the exposure to cognates, but more so in the advanced setting for English learners, any advanced grades as well, because I know for younger students it would kind of vary, but obviously for Esperanza Rising would be much more like middle school age, so this could definitely help with much more complex words and definitely that context clues as well. So I think that's a great strategy to introduce and teach the concept of cognates to my future students. And then moving on, how can cognates be beneficial to students? So definitely, and as the reading mentions over and over again, definitely helps with comprehension. So if the students obviously don't know the meaning of a word, they are not going to know what is going on, and they might miss a very important aspect of the book and of the reading. So I think it definitely helps with comprehension, but it also definitely helps with fluency as well. Because when we're reading, if you don't know the meaning of a word, you kind of have to stop and take the time to either figure it out using context clues, or like the reading mentioned, find somebody to help you, know the tell you the definition or aid you in looking for the definition for the word. So it kind of takes time away from your reading, and it interrupts that fluency stage that a student can be at. Um, so again, according to Montelongo and the article these authors wrote, using tools like context clues helps with meaning making capabilities. So that's another benefit of cognates. So they create these capabilities in meaning making, which can add confidence and understanding. So definitely, if these students are able to derive the meaning of these words by using context clues and using cognates, they will feel much more, they will get that sense of pride, and they will get that sense of confidence, that they could do it on their own instead of looking for somebody, an adult or a teacher or an aide, to help them in finding the definition, right? So I think definitely adds in the confidence, and it also definitely builds on the linguistic strengths of Spanish speaking students. So, as we've been learning, we have also seen that the misconception between owning two languages, it's thought that they are two separate identities and they have no connection, and it might be a barrier for language development. But obviously, as we've seen from research and from readings and reports, this is not true, and actually building on prior knowledge is much more efficient. I think of it as learning from scratch. If you learn something from scratch, it's going to take a lot more time, and it's going to be a lot more difficult too. And time is not something that teachers have plenty of. Obviously, they only have the students for a very limited amount of time, and there is certain standards that have to be filled. So I think finding the most efficient way to get to the students and to reach the students, and also developing their linguistic understanding and their cultural understanding to the language understanding, can definitely aid in that. So again, using prior knowledge, using connections can definitely help in that bridge of the two languages. And I think the authors mentioned this very thoroughly too. I think it makes the connection between the two languages, and not only does it help with the technical issues of that second language acquisition, or helping in the native languages as well, reinforcing that native language as well, but definitely also social emotional health. I feel that when they have that link between the two languages, and they can use that native language instead of kind of shying away from it or pushing it to the side, it definitely helps their self-esteem, helps their confidence, and it definitely adds pride to their culture. So that is something that the students can bring to the table and feel comfortable when bringing to the table, apart from obviously adding to the academic benefits. So I think that's all that I have for today, and I hope you guys enjoy this video.